Hi, my name is Kirsten Dominguez. I'm the marketing director of Revoice, and this is Matt Ventura. How are you? I know you are feeling a little, not, you were mentioning that you're feeling a little tired.
Yes, well, I'm in Australia, so it's past my bedtime over here, even though I know you've just woken up in the US over there. But
Yes.
yeah, it's nice to be able to finally meet you in real time and have a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure like the Revoice audience, our like community is really excited to meet you. And last year we had a really great service, and I'm sure we're just like I know that our team has just been wanting to build on that since. So tell us a little bit about who you are. I think that I'm sure that you're pretty new to our space, or I'm not sure. Like tell us, who are you?
Um, who am I? I'm a child of God, and that is my identity. I'm also much more than that. Actually, I'm pretty sure the first Revoice was that in 2018,
Oh,
2017.
it was in
Um,
our first.
I'm pretty sure I live streamed most of that from my home in Melbourne at the time. So I've actually been, even from a long way away in Australia, fairly connected to the sort of spaces that Revoice has been creating since then. I've watched a few conferences in real time as much as I can because the time difference is pretty horrendous sometimes.
Mhm.
So that's a bit about my connection to your conference. I am a professional musician by background, so I play an instrument called the bassoon, which plays the low notes at the back of the orchestra. I play a bunch of other woodwinds and love teaching music as well. That's sort of my main career background. But in the last couple of years, I actually made a change towards doing ministry full time. Really loved that. Discovered some things I didn't realize I would love, like working with kids and youth, um, which yeah, was a bit of a surprise to me during my ministry apprenticeship. Did a couple of years of what we call Bible college, what I think you would call seminary.
Mhm.
So I'm finishing off my Master of Divinity. But actually, I've had a bit of a change since then, and now I'm working full time in chaplaincy in a school and doing a lot of sort of trauma informed sort of support work for some of our young people there. So it's kind of a mix of different things that I do. I guess beyond that, what I do vocationally, I'm a Filipino Australian. My dad's an immigrant from the Philippines to Australia, so I identify as multi-ethnic and still figuring out what the hell it actually means. Um, Mostly, I identify with sort of my Australian culture, except when it comes to food, and then I feel very Asian because I love cooking for people and doing hospitality, and that's really what I feel most connected to my dad's culture. I'm also a celibate gay Christian, and that's something I've been having to think through a lot over the last probably 10, 15 years. I've been quite out and speaking openly about that for probably the last 8 or 9 years. And as you can imagine, that sort of that conversation is constantly shifting as language develops and as I change my mind and learn new things and realize that some of how I would have told my story a while back might be different to how I tell it now. Um, and working in ministry in a more public space, doing a lot of pastoral care for and with other queer Christians. That sort of yeah, that's changed the conversation a bit when I've had to work um, in a more visible leadership role, and that's been both a real privilege of being able to actually hear a lot of people's stories um, that I maybe wouldn't have heard if I didn't have that visibility, but also having a lot of being in the firing line, I think, as you can imagine, both from the more conservative side of Christians, but also from queer people who think that as a Christian that I'm not necessarily perceived as a safe person for them. So that's something I continue to grapple with. But I think like most side B people, I'm used to having these liminal spaces, getting quite comfy in that. And I'm just really excited for Revoice to be a place where I can connect with more people who get that.
That's really exciting. I have like so many sprout questions that I want to ask, but I think I want to land on how did you come to know Jesus? Like, what's your story to becoming a Christian?
Um, I always respond to that question with another question, which is like, which story? Because I actually feel like, it's a lifetime of different stories, and it's, lots of ways I think God has been bringing me home into his family and bringing me back home into his family. So I grew up, I think, in a family environment where I was taught about God, I was taught about the Bible and about how Jesus came to save us. And so I actually grew up reading the Bible from well, basically as long as I can remember. That wasn't always a positive experience. I remember my dad would make us read the Bible every night before bed, and I think I thought it was boring. Like most, I think I was 5 at the time. Most 5-year-olds would not find it that interesting. And we weren't talking kids' Bibles either. Like he made us read like the real deal. Um, but I remember even back then there was just one chapter that I actually found interesting that I kept reading over and over again, and that was Luke chapter 15. The story of well, first I think it's the lost coin, and then it's the lost sheep, and then the lost son, and just that in the heart of the good shepherd who actually would leave behind the 99 sheep and go seeking out that one lost sheep and carry it gently over his shoulders till he brings it home to safety. That something about that really resonated with me, and I think I longed for a sense of that, not only that inclusion but that safety. Home didn't feel like a very safe environment for me growing up, so that picture of either a loving father or a good shepherd was really, I think, what my heart needed. And so, even if that's all I read for a couple of years, I read that every night. And I think in very simple and childlike ways, God used that to kind of plant the seeds of my faith. So, yeah, that's probably where it started for me.
Beautiful, thanks. How did you discover Revoice back in 2018? Like, were you already familiar with people in our community?
Yeah, so I've been a part of a few different like online spaces where side B people can find community with each other. And so it's hard to explain to my friends how I have these friends on the internet because they don't fully understand what my internet friends are like to me because they think they're just some randos that I happen to message on Facebook every once in a while. But I have to try and explain that they've actually become more like a chosen family to me, even if they live in different parts of the world. So I already felt quite well connected to some people in sort of the side B world. I actually interestingly read some sociology research fairly recently about how queer young adults actually experience the internet very differently from how heterosexual young adults do. And one of the really significant ways is that queer young adults experience people on the internet as their primary community because that's the place they find their first sense of belonging with peers when often they haven't experienced that in their geographically local communities. And I think that was really true of my experience. So yeah, there's a bunch of people I think in the Saudi world that I felt a real kinship and spiritual encouragement and solidarity with. So I heard about Revoice, all over the place through those channels, even before it became a thing. So just had the time to sort of live stream the first conference. I think if it's the first one I'm thinking of, I think the topic was lament. And I remember that being a topic that really resonated with me at the time because I just felt like none of the Christian spaces I'd experienced up until that point had given me space to actually express that grief and lament. And to be so comfortable taking our lament to God. But what I've really enjoyed is seeing the journey that Revoice has been on in every conference since then of actually some of these other topics that don't just linger in that trauma. We're no longer just defined by the trauma that is so often associated with being gay and Christian. But actually looking beyond that to what does a liberated narrative look like of aspiring to a life of flourishing as queer Christian? How can we actually write new social scripts that might be different from kind of the world heteronormative scripts, but true to Christian calling that Jesus calls us to? So I've been, I think, really enjoying being part of that journey from a distance. And obviously incredibly excited to be joining you all for the conference in real life for the first time this year.
That's really exciting. Oh, sorry. Because yeah, that's really exciting. Like just hearing your story so far, it sounds just incredible to have you. It's incredible to like, this will be the first time you're with us in person, but like you'll be leading us in such an intimate, like special time of musical worship. And that's just incredibly exciting. Like what a treasure you are in our community, and like the fact that you've been a part of our community like from such a distance is just like I think that's what Revoice like hopes to create and do in its communities. And like, that's beautiful that you've, you know, really felt that and felt supported and loved, and felt that you have family, like this kingdom that we're a part of, like it is our real family, and it transcends blood, you know.
And continents even.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Time and space. So I've heard, because I'm part of the staff, that the musical worship at this conference will be trauma informed, and I wanted to ask you, like, what does that mean? How does that what does that look like? Trauma informed, and then I think, yeah, trauma informed mostly is my question.
So if any of my friends are in the room right now, they'll laugh to hear you mention that, because I'm so passionate about trauma-informed ministry that it's almost become a little bit of a cliche when people associate that phrase with me. In fact, I've just written a blog on sort of why trauma-informed ministry is so vital for every Christian leader to be thinking about, not just something for people who have a specialized interest. I think for me, as a survivor of trauma and as someone who does so much sort of pastoral care work and sort of support work with different survivors of trauma, and especially with a lot of queer people, both Christians in my ministry circles, but also people of other faiths or no faith in my chaplaincy background. I just see so many people whose trauma has meant that they don't experience Christian faith as feeling safe for them, or they might not experience walking into a Christian space or a conference or even singing worship songs as safe. And I don't just mean comfortable, I mean safe. And what I mean by that is, like, our nervous systems are actually, for those of us who've experienced trauma, they're wired to actually being on high alert, scanning for danger. And the rational part of our brain shutting down, as the part of our brain that's wired to keep us alive is kind of flooding our body with adrenaline, and the heart is racing. And it's not possible to actually learn deeply about new ideas or to grapple with some of the Bible's teaching when that's happening in our body and in our brain. Similarly, it's very hard to build genuinely trusting and intimate relationships with other people if we are feeling, like we're just fighting for survival. And even if we're not actually under threat of our life, if that's what it feels like in our body, because of the different things that we associate with risks of harm, it's just going to be very, very difficult to have the rich experience of our faith that I think we deserve to have. And that's not always just to do with religious trauma, but I think a lot of us bring our own baggage of kind of scanning for those markers of safety in any environment that we step into, not having the privilege of being able to just trust people by default or trust and use faith by default, but actually needing to find those explicit markers of safety that not only are you welcome here, but you're safe here. So I've been doing a lot of thinking as I've been leading worship in my own little church community about what is it that actually makes worship feel safe? What is it about our church community that feels so trauma informed to me that I can go there and for someone who has an absolute buttload of religious trauma like I do, to walk into this space and actually just feel completely comfortable to sit there and cry in worship, and to be surrounded by people who know me and to feel actually they're holding space for me to bring all of myself and putting these very messy parts into worship, and to actually be ministered to in that. And so there's a few things like that that I've been thinking about, and I'm still discerning that, and I'm still trying to figure out what is that. Sometimes it's just an intuition. You just vibe, this song feels trauma informed. That band, something about them is just, the vibes are off. And sometimes it is just an intuitive thing that our nervous system learn to perceive. But I think one of the things that I have identified is not having this presumption of safety, not assuming that people walk into a space and should automatically feel safe. And especially not in a conference like Revoice, where so many of us will have religious trauma from ways that the church has treated us, whether deliberately or not. And so I'm thinking about how the sort of songs we sing, but also the way that we introduce those songs, the sort of psalms that might be read in our calls to worship, might actually meet people where they're at and saying, hey, look, you might not actually feel totally safe or even comfortable here, and that's okay. Like, you belong. In fact, this is for you. Choosing songs that actually acknowledge the distance that we might feel from God or from others, but then actually not just staying there, that place of distance or feeling unsafe, but actually inviting people to come this journey, not just across the conference, but in every session. Um, I'm thinking about how to create a trajectory where we meet people where they're at and then bring them into this place of intimacy and safety if that's somewhere they want to go, and give them choice, because choice and agency is so important for people to feel safe. Give them ways that they can opt out or to feel in control of how far they go in that journey. And also acknowledging people will have different reactions, and some people might hear something and think, wow, this is exactly what I needed. I'm vibing this. This is fantastic. And other people might be like, I feel numb. This isn't doing it for me. And that second person is no less um, welcome. They might feel like actually maybe they're not getting it, or maybe everyone around them seems like they're putting on a facade. And it's very easy to feel isolated and marginalized if you feel the only person in the room who perceives the space around you that way. And so I want to make sure that not just in our worship and our liturgy, but just in the sort of the awareness that we might bring to it as a staff team, that um, anyone who has any kind of public visible role at Revoice has that awareness that yeah, people will bring all these different things, and we want to show those explicit markers of safety that this is for you too. So I put together a list of songs that I think might show some of those markers of safety in sometimes implicit ways, sometimes more explicit ways. So one of the themes that I've really enjoyed um, running with for this conference is kind of themes of family. And I know that can be a really complex, loaded feeling for us. It certainly is for me in my experience of family. But almost wanting to reclaim that for us and give people a sense of what we might call chosen family in the queer community, but I think in Christian theology, it's actually a sense of your spiritual family. That no matter what your experience of your nuclear family may have been, however safe or unsafe that may have been, God has actually called us into this deeper and richer experience of inclusion that transcends any bonds of biology, or anyone who shares the same orientation or the same ethnicity, or even the same faith tradition, and actually to be able to gather the people from all around the world of Roman Catholic and Orthodox and Protestant traditions together. That's actually something I'm really excited about, and to look around the room and say we are each other's family. And that's a theme that I'm hoping to explore in some of the songs, some of the language that we're using, some of the scripture readings that we'll be drawing on.
Yeah, that's really, thank you for explaining all of that. I really, as someone who like in marketing, I'm always like picking up like what people are saying about the conference and asking them like, what do they like or dislike, and making sure, do my best to make sure people are like as honest as they can be. And like we do have so many people of different like backgrounds as far as Christianity or our faith community goes. And it's just really important to like, it's been really important for our community that it's like that we're representing as many people as possible, and not just like leaning super charismatic or leaning super orthodox and so, or traditional, and like really trying to find that middle ground, which like is really hard. And and we might not meet everybody's needs, but we're doing our best. And it's like so important that we're like continuously thinking of like everyone in our community and what they might need. And so
Yeah, it's been hard work to do that, because I think the middle ground's not always a middle ground. You don't sort of just like split the difference between a really sort of contemporary or sort of charismatic style of worship and a traditional liturgical sort of hymn, and split down the middle. Like you've actually got to do a bit of both at different times. And so I'm a little nervous actually about, I fear that maybe we'll have a bit of whiplash going from this traditional hymn with this beautiful big pipe organ in this historic church building through to some much more sort of contemporary styles of worship, and having some prayers and liturgy from an Eastern Orthodox sort of tradition. Like that's going to be quite challenging for us, but hopefully, even as it's unfamiliar, it's actually something that broadens our horizons to dream bigger about what the church is. Because something that's really caused me a lot of despair as I've seen the state of the church, in particular towards queer people, is thinking that the little pocket of the evangelical church that I see is the whole church. And actually, I'm realizing through this Revoice experience, it's so much bigger. And I can't wait to be in a room full of people who, my experience at church will be so incomprehensible to them and vice versa. And that's going to be good for me to see that the kingdom God is growing is so much bigger than I can actually picture right now. So even if I get exposed to ways of praying or ways of singing or ways of reading the Bible that are unusual to me, that's actually a really good thing that will broaden my perspective.
Yeah, yeah, that's everything. Love it. I'm so excited. So riffing off of that a little bit, I also know from being in the like staff communication that like the conference is going to be that you're focusing a lot on it being culturally and ecumenically diverse. Like, what does that mean for you? What does that look like? Why is that important? Like, just tell us.
The first one that comes to mind is actually it's been really humbling. I've really realized my own limitations, um, both in terms of my cultural awareness, but also my ecumenical awareness. And I've had to spend so many hours actually just listening to people and consulting with them for perspectives that I just couldn't have and couldn't obtain on my own. That's been really good for me. It triggered a whole I'm not sure quite what the right word is because it's not a crisis. It's a really positive kind of experience, but like a total rethinking of what I understand worship to be, realizing how much I've thought of worship. And actually, really, it's actually just a very white experience of worship, and that's okay, I am multi. I think I identify as white as well, and that's the sort of way I'm familiar with worshiping God. But actually, talking to my friend Johnny and how in people of color communities, how they experience worship differently, and some of the stuff he shared with me about, in historically white worship, every line of text really matters, and there's this urgency to pack as much theological density into every song as we can, and to kind of almost hurry to the end of the song to cover a lot of theological ground. And he said, actually, we people of color, we love to just linger because we know we need God. We don't have to have this urgency to remind ourselves. We feel it every day. We feel it in our bones. We feel it when we walk outside into this world that's not made for us, how dependent we are on God's sovereignty. And so we're happy to just linger on this chorus over and over again and just sit with these simple but profound truths about what God is like and what he has done for his people. And that's really challenged me actually, and some of my own attitudes about this stuff, and realizing even when I didn't think of it as a cultural thing, the sort of musical choices that I gravitate towards actually reflect a particular cultural experience that has shaped me. So that's been a whole journey for me, and I'm still kind of figuring that out. And I feel a little bit underprepared for this role. But realizing actually, it really, really matters that we hold space for these different ways of encountering God in worship. Um, and if we only did songs that I'm used to doing, it would be a tragedy because there's so many more beautiful ways of experiencing God. That idea of just lingering and sitting with some of these big truths, not being in a hurry to sort of have more head knowledge, but actually just sit with that lands in our hearts is something that I think other cultural experiences really have to teach me. And I think similarly, like same thing with the ecumenical sort of approach. So I'm a Protestant by background myself, and yeah, I have to think quite deliberately about what does it look like to include um, worshipping traditions of other background. And again, I'm still having to consult and learn from other people. But I've been so encouraged by the support of the Revoice staff team because I think not only do we have a few different patrons represented on staff, which is really important to have it represented in leadership, but they've been so helpful for some random guy in Australia who somehow landed this role to actually be given all these contacts of, oh, here's this amazing, from a Catholic leader who is going to be able to help you through some of this stuff. Or, here's someone from this tradition who's, really keen to put together some liturgy for the conference. And actually, it's not me doing this all myself, thank goodness. But there's really so many amazing people in our community that are all really keen to share different insights and traditions from their own background. So for me, mostly it's actually just been shutting up and doing a lot more listening.
Mhm.
and seeing how much all these different people have to offer, and being prepared to make space for that as a leader, because I think my tendency as a leader in the past has been to say it myself, and I'm realizing um, I don't have that much more to say on some of these things than other people do. And so I've tried really hard to cultivate a really diverse team as well of our musicians. Because, you know, if it's not represented at the front, then, you know, no amount of just like adding a token song or some prayer or liturgy is really going to make people feel truly included. So yeah, those are some of the things that we're trying to think through in preparation for the conference.
Thanks for sharing. Um, what are you most excited about?
Oh, the first thing that comes to mind is I'm excited for the real life hugs because I've got a lot of really deep friends, and some that I consider family that I've never seen in real life. I've never been able to hug before,
That's
and
incredible. Yeah.
I'm pretty excited for that. I'm actually really blessed to have some fantastic community in Australia. Um, but yeah, it'll be nice to actually be there in person, and that'll be really strange after so long of a lot of you being just internet friends. I think similarly, just that experience of being an embodied community in the same room and being able to hear the singing together. I think, you know, imagine 500 people in this historical church and hearing the acoustics of those voices all around you. I think that'll be a little picture of heaven of us gathering around throne, singing "Worthy is the Lamb." So I think that's something that's actually been really encouraging to me and what's been a difficult year so far of thinking that is a time that I know my soul will be fed. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to share that community with you all.
That's really exciting. Yeah, I can't imagine like those hugs are going to be so lovely. How can Revoice attendees prepare for like these intimate musical spaces? I know that we've discussed a Spotify playlist. Is there anything else?
Yeah, certainly I'd love to get that Spotify playlist sent out there, partly because I'd love it if everyone knew the songs before they came so we could just sing them all really heartily.
Yeah.
Partly also because thinking of being trauma informed, I think it's important that people know what they're expecting. A friend once described it really helpfully to me as he said he needs to be able to see around the corner to feel safe. And so I want to be as transparent about what we're planning as I can be. Um, so yeah, if people want to listen to some of those songs and maybe identify what are the things that might actually not sit super well with them, what might actually make them feel on edge or possibly unsafe, and what does it feel like in their bodies to experience some of those things, and what does it look like for them to engage safety. Um, you know, we have a certain responsibility for ourselves to engage safety, whether that means asking a friend to come along with us and just, you know, be a support person, or having a friend who's willing to just be on the other end of a messenger conversation that we can text at the conference, and not just the good stuff, but also, oh, you know, this annoying thing the speaker just said really got to me. Yeah, that was really insensitive, and yeah, that's going to happen, and it's going to be painful for us. And I want to be humble enough and willing to acknowledge that we're not going to do a perfect job. And so, if you want to identify what it looks like for you to engage safety so you can really make the most of this conference experience, so you feel like you can bring all of yourself to those relationships, to that worship, and to sitting in the Word and learning from the Bible, then I think you'll just have the best experience if you really do feel fully included and fully safe.
And, um, and what do you hope that like, okay, the way that I phrased the question was, what do you hope Revoice attendees will take away from these musical worship sessions? Like, what do you hope that they like walk away with? And I feel weird about the term Revoice attendees, our community, our family. What do you hope they walk away with?
Like, to be honest, there's a couple of songs on the list that I'm like, well, this is maybe not the most ideal congregational song. Like maybe it's a bit low to sing, or it's a little harder to pick up the rhythm of this song. But I've actually kept it in there, not because I think it's the best song we could possibly sing, but because I actually think I just want our community to know some of these songs. I think some of them are really important and they might be unfamiliar. Um, but that's kind of the point is actually I want people to walk away with um, some new songs that I might not have come across before and some new imagery for understanding God's posture towards us and his love for us. There's a song that I'm absolutely in love with called Whosoever by Rent Collective. And there's a line in there that says "You are safe here," you know, whosoever. Um, and it's kind of invitation to the outsider, the outcast, to come home. And I just don't think I've had it put so clear to me for that you are safe here in a song, and that language of safety that is so important to me.
Mhm.
So I think it's like little moments like that where people actually go away with some new imagery, some new language, and hopefully some new songs that they can keep singing on their hearts, kind of, you know, throughout the year. And hopefully that also inspires people to write new music and poetry, and find new ways to tell their own stories. I really hope that it doesn't just stop, you know, when we stop singing that last session, but that actually inspires people to keep sitting with some of these truths that we might think about during the conference.
Wow, thank you so much. That was beautiful. I can really feel your heart for our community, and we're so grateful for you. Um, I think that this Revoice experience is going to be really special, and we're really what great times for you to be coming across the world to like be with us and lead this community. You truly are such a treasure, and it's going to be just really exciting to be together in this space. I feel I've been coming to Revoice um, as an ally for I think 2 or 3 years now, and like I can tell that this is going to be a really unique space, really intimate and special, and I'm so fortunate to be able to experience it with you and everybody else at the conference. So yeah, thank you for saying yes to this space, and for dedicating. I mean, you have a job. Like, thank you for adding to your day with like preparing for all of this, and having all the conversations and praying about it. I think that our community will benefit from every like second that you've spent thinking about us and what we might need in this space. Both just everyone in this space. You if we can see that you as our brother have really like, you know, really interceded for us and really like thought about each one of us, and that's so beautiful, and so evident of like the heart of God for each one of us, and his heart in you. And so thank you. It's just, you're such a pleasure, and it's great to be making a new friend, and continuing to like see our family grow at Revoice.
Yeah, thank you so much for the conversation, and yeah, those kind of words. I do already feel like the community's already given me so much more than I've given it, so I'm excited to keep encouraging each other more at the conference. I also feel like I need to point out for those who might be watching this by video, that Kirsten's nails today are amazing, and I haven't had a chance to tell her this yet. And having
Thank
come
you.
across, they're like, it's so good.
Thanks.
I needed to call it out. So
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, great. This has been such a lovely time. Thank you for spending time with us and sharing your heart. And we'll see you at the conference.
awesome. See you there.